Hey folks, Stuart Warren here. Gonna teach you how to tie my HIT fly. It stands for head in the sand. This is actually a fly I found on the side of the river one day and put it into my box and caught a fish on it later that day. This fly is a super easy one to vary from the colors I'm gonna show you today. Like this one's blue and purple, a little bit of chartreuse in the back there. But I'm gonna teach you one that's a popsicle color because it's kind of fun. Great lower clear water fly. When you know that big one's just not working for you anymore, it's a good one to stick in your box. So I'll start my little tool here, and I'm using an intruder shank, and it's got the double back eye. It adds just a little bit more weight to the fly and provides just a little bit more of an ability for the fly to keep its course in the water. Not necessarily thinking about getting it deep, I'm just thinking more about it keeping somewhat of a straight swimming pattern. And I'm using just a 70 size thread. I like a smaller thread because it keeps a nice small eye. In this fly, we're not tying on any big dumbbells or anything, so I don't need a real strong thread. So let's go ahead and start your thread at the very front and wrap back. Trim off your tag, and I have my trailing hook pre-done already. And this is 2 strands of 40-pound firewire, and this is a nice little trick that Keith Liddy showed me. Put a little piece of tape on your hook so that you don't hook yourself, and I've already debarbed this for that reason as well. And I'm just going to have that hook poke out just maybe about a 1/2 inch behind where my thread stopped. Give it a couple wraps to start it, and then just pull those strands straight and wrap it forward. And make sure you make those wraps really close to each other. This is a way to keep that hook from being pulled out if you do happen to hook into that monster fish, or more likely when you hook the bottom, you won't pull that hook off the fly. And then I like to double it back over on top of itself and wrap it back just to add a little bit more strength to it. And I like to trim it a little bit short and then wrap over the ends so it's nice and clean. I'm going to use some diamond braid here. It's just an easy kind of underlayment, if you will. Adds a little bit of flash to the fly. Go ahead and tie that in. And then I'm going to use a pink or a purple saddle hackle. I'm going to pick one that's got some nice kind of clean fibers on it, so it provides some nice structure to the fly and also adds a little bit of purple. And clean up your webby stuff off the bottom so it's out of your way. And leave it long. We're going to wrap a lot of this on there. So as long as you can get it's good. And I'm going to tie it in with the tip first. Pull back some of those fibers, and I'll just clip off the tip and tie that in like so. And bring your thread forward to about a 1/2 inch from the eye, or maybe a little bit short of a 1/2 inch. And then you can take your diamond braid, pull those hackle fibers out of the way, and wrap it forward. And just try to make this lay as flat as you can. It doesn't always want to lay super flat, but you don't want to have any missing pieces. And tie that off nice and tight. And trim the excess. And go ahead and bring your hackle forward. And go ahead and kind of stroke those fibers back towards the base of the feather. That'll splay them out. And as you wrap forward, just pull those hackles back as best you can. And you can wrap this pretty tight. The more you put on here, the bigger the bulk of your fly is going to be. So just keep that in mind. If you tie too bulky of a fly, it has a hard time sinking. Not necessarily with this fly because it is kind of a sparse fly or pattern as to begin with. But just remember that when you're tying your other flies, that the more material you tie in there, the harder it will be to sink it. In some cases, you want that. You want a fly that doesn't sink real fast so you can pull it into the inside of those shallower runs, especially at higher flows. Wrap off your hackle feather there. Okay, then I'm going to take some purple bunny, some rabbit zonker. And this is definitely a step that can be a little bit tricky because we're going to spin this as kind of our shoulders to the fly. So take your rabbit zonker and we're going to cut about 1 inch of it. Like so. So you have a chunk like that. Then you're going to make a dubbing loop. So I'm putting a loop in there. Then I'm going to take my thread and wrap it around that loop 3 times to secure it. And then a couple securing wraps on the shank. And then just take your rabbit, grab it by the hide, and then take your other fingers and kind of pull those little furs away, and you can kind of clean up some of the excess. And then what I'm going to do, once I get it kind of straightened out so I can hold it well, so I'm just going to take my scissors and just cut along the base of those fur fibers where it meets the hide so it frees them. And then you can just kind of grab it with your other finger. Be careful not to let it get too crazy and just pull away anything that's excess. And I'm just going to stick that in my dubbing loop here. And I want that to get in there so that all the fibers lay straight and the thread lands at the base of those fur fibers. And I'll hold this up here so you can see it if it will cooperate with me. Something like that. Okay. Then you're going to take your dubbing spinner here and put that in the bottom of the loop. And then I'm just going to pinch at the bottom of the thread here with my 2 fingers. And then I'm going to give this a nice spin before I let go with these 2 fingers. I'm going to let this thing kind of start to go. And I'm just going to slowly release my 2 fingers there. And then I'm going to take my little pick here and just kind of pick it out a little bit. You'll notice that some of the fibers here get a little wound up. So you can just work those out with that. And then I'm going to spin it again. And that's just going to really tighten up the work here. And then I'm going to take my handy dandy toothbrush, used this morning, and really just pick that out. We want to be a little bit aggressive with this because there's going to be a few fibers that pull out. We don't want those to be tied into the fly. So you're going to just kind of pick it back towards the top, and you can reverse direction and pick it back towards the bottom. And you see how that just really fluffs it up nice and neat. Here's a good tip for when you're doing this. These fibers, when you go to palmer it, are going to be really hard to control. So just have a little glass of water, dip your fingers in there, get them nice and wet, and then you can just wet these rabbit fibers. You'll see what it does is it just pulls it back and kind of out of the way. And we just want to pull those back towards the back of the fly there. And then with my other hand, I'm going to grab a hold of those fibers and keep them tight as I wrap. And I'm just going to wrap these around with those fibers pointed towards the back end of the fly. And just keep stroking those guys as you do so. Okay, and then I'm just going to go ahead and tie that off. A couple securing wraps. And go ahead and snip your dubbing loop off there. Then you can take your handy dandy toothbrush again and just work out that rabbit. And so what this does, this rabbit, is it's going to provide kind of like the shoulder, if you will. So it gives it a little bit of bulk in the very front, but also in the water it really puffs up and moves around. It looks great. Okay, now I'm going to tie in some flash. I'm going to use some purple Flashabou, and then I'm going to use a little bit of red angel hair. And I'm going to tie in this red angel hair first. And I don't want too much of it. A lot of times with these kind of clear water flies, I see too much flash. So really kind of get a nice thin strand. Angel hair can be kind of fussy to work with, so pull out the extra stuff, clip yourself a length of it, about the length of the fly from where you're tying it into the back of the hook. And then you're just going to tie those in. And then I'm going to keep all those fibers in my fingers and take my scissors and trim them to length so that they're not getting too long. And you'll find with some of this angel hair that once in a while you get one folded on top of itself, and then as you're fishing it'll come unfolded, so you'll end up with an angel hair fiber that comes back like 6 inches. Drives me nuts. I don't know if the fish can tell, but it drives me absolutely crazy, and that's more important. And then I'm going to take 3 pieces of purple Flashabou here. Trim those. And go ahead and tie those guys in too, right on top of that red angel hair. And leave your Flashabou fibers long too. That'll allow you to trim it to the appropriate length. And I'm just going to run those guys about as long as I did with that angel hair. Okay. And then you can just make sure you trim up all these little loose ends. It'll help keep the head on the fly nice and short, or nice and tight and good looking. We don't want a real big head necessarily. Okay, now for the fun part. We're going to tie in the wing. This is Arctic fox hair, and I'm going to use red. And you're going to want some long ones for this. This wing, the first portion of the wing, is going to be long, and we want it to go back to about the bend of the hook, or just shy of that. And try not to tie in too much of it either. We want to keep this fly fairly sparse. So maybe something about like that would be fine. And what I like to do with my Arctic fox is I like to work it a little bit. So pull out some of those long loose members by pinching the fibers down towards the base, and you can kind of clean up some of those scraggly ones. And then I'm going to run my fingers all the way up to the tips, and I'm going to clean out some of these not the guard hairs, the under fur, just to take a little bit more of that bulk out. And you'll see it really cleans up nice and neat. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and tie that in on top. Perfect length. And I'm just going to wrap all those ends of those fibers into the head there to help secure them. And then you can just pull on those and pull any loose ones out. Okay, now I'm going to tie on the second wing, which is another chunk of Arctic fox. This one's going to be a little bit orange. And this second wing is not going to be as long as the first one. We're going to kind of keep it a little bit shorter. So you can use a shorter fiber if you want, or you can just cut it short. It's up to you. I'm going to take a shorter fiber, so I like to save my longer fibers for when I need a longer fiber. And we're going to use about half the amount for this wing as we did with the first wing. Make it nice and just real sparse. Trim that. You'll notice I'm not stacking these fibers. I want them to kind of be more natural and have a little bit of a taper towards the tip of the wing versus just being real straight. And do the same thing with these. Grab the guard hairs at the very end and pull off some of that under fur. Nice, just a real sparse amount. And I'm going to tie this in so that it's about a little bit longer than half the length of that first wing. Like so. You see how those kind of pop up a little bit higher, so it kind of provides that rounded shoulder. Has a lot of great motion in the water. And I'm going to cut those tips nice and short as well. Okay, then I'm going to take purple guinea. And I like a nice, decently long fiber on this one. It's going to provide kind of a cool translucent look between the purple and the orange and the red. So pick yourself a guinea fiber or guinea feather that's got a little bit of a length to the fibers, and go ahead and clean up all the webbing stuff off the bottom. And then pull back on those fibers there. Give yourself a nice tip to tie in. And I'm just going to clip off that little tip on the front and tie that guy in. bring your thread forward, and then we're gonna palmer this guy by pulling straight up on the feather, and I'm just gonna pull the fibers back, kind of sandwich them as I wrap it. And that should make them lay all nice and neat in theory, which never really works out as much as you'd like, but they behave themselves for the most part. And clip off your feather. And the head's a little longer than I would like it to be, but it'll fish just fine. Give yourself some good securing wraps, kind of build up a little bit of a head towards the front there. And I'm gonna give it a half hitch. And then a whip finish. Make sure you pull that nice and tight. Go ahead and clip your thread. And then you can finish with whatever of your favorite head cement you have. I prefer this Loon hard head myself. It's water-based, so as it dries out, you can add a little more water and get it to be nice and fluid again. And the nice thing about a rotary vise is being able to spin that and really make sure you work that hard head in to the different threads. And I like to kind of put a little bit on just on the base of the feather to help secure that as well. But there you have it, the popsicle hit.